Today's panel is our last major equity and student engagement event of the year. We're known for sort of putting together programs that really emphasize social justice, diversity, inclusion, and institutional life. So before I introduce the panel, I do want to take this moment to acknowledge the Tohono O'odham land on which the university is built and to pay respect to the native cultures whose presence can still be felt in this place. Thank you. Our esteemed panel today includes our special guest, Natalie Gillard, Assistant Vice President of Multicultural Experience at Stevenson University. In addition to her position as Assistant Vice President, Natalie is also the creator of Factuality, the board game, which allows participants to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and allowing for a courageous conversation about structural inequality in America. And we will have opportunities for folks to play the game today and tomorrow while Natalie's here, so we'll give you more info about that at the end. Natalie is a first-generation college student. She went to LaSalle College, where she received a bachelor's degree in legal studies, and then on to Lesley University, where she received her master's degree in race and ethnic relations. Welcome, Natalie. And next, we have our very own Marla Franco, the Director of Assessment and Research for Student Affairs, Enrollment Management, and Academic Initiatives and Success here at the University of Arizona. First-generation college student also. Marla has her PhD in higher education leadership from Azusa Pacific University. Next, we have Teresa Graham-Brett, our Associate Dean of Students. Teresa has earned her bachelor's degree here at the U of A in history and Japanese, and a JD from the law school here at U of A also, and she too is a first-generation college student. And again, Teresa is our Associate Dean of Students in Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement. And last but not least, we have Kendall Washington White, our Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs and the Dean of Students. Also a first-generation college student, Kendall has her master's in educational leadership from Northern Arizona University, where she's also pursuing her educational doctorate at this time. And in I want to also introduce our moderator, Ms. Lily Fisher, Lolo. Many of you know her. And Lolo is a U of A alumna of the UA dance program, and she's completing her master's degree in higher education here at the university. And Lolo is the graduate coordinator in equity and student engagement. Thank you, Lolo. So in closing, I'd also like to thank and acknowledge our Assistant Dean of Students, Mr. Sherrod Robbins, and the whole team, Lexi and others in the Equity and Student Engagement unit for their work on this, for helping to visualize and organize this panel, and especially for planning the details for our visiting guest, Natalie. And without further ado, I am honored to present the Equity and Student Engagement sponsored panel, Marching to Center, Women of Color and Institutional Leadership. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Chapman. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. So this is a true honor for us to have this panel with us today. All four of these women I actually look up to personally, so it's especially an honor for me. So thank you so much for joining our panel today. We're going to go ahead and get started. At the end, we will have some time for Q&A from the audience, so start thinking on your questions now. But for now, we do have some slated questions for you all. So you can choose, pass the mic to whoever would like to answer. So our first question is thinking about many students and staff members who are hoping to rise in leadership roles today are asking about challenges and barriers you face. So specifically thinking about as you rise in the roles, were there people, circumstances, or places that stood in your way from rising to the roles ever?
Good afternoon. The mic was immediately passed to me. They just They decided before I even sat here that they would treat their guests with this honor by giving me the mic. So I thank them for their consideration. That was really kind. I encountered challenges as soon as I got into the field of higher education. My career began 10 years ago? Actually 11 years ago. I'm wrapping up my 11th academic year. And I remember being a first-generation student, coming from an immigrant family, not really knowing how to navigate these types of spaces. And I took a resident director position at Wheelock College. And that's where I met Sherrod, and I'm happy and I feel comfortable name dropping, which is something that we're kind of fearful of doing in this field. But they were recently absorbed by BU, so I feel like it's very safe. And there was a vacancy for Director of Student Leadership and Diversity Programs that I applied for, and the dean politely pulled me aside and told me why I was not qualified. I was wrapping up my master's degree. They had a field search, and they opened up a coordinator position, and they offered it to me, and I didn't know better, so I took it. And then I reported to a white woman who was younger than me with a bachelor's degree, who got promoted to assistant dean in the same academic year. And then she left, and I ran the office as a coordinator for the next 2.5 years by myself. During that time, they reopened the search for the assistant dean, and I wasn't considered. But I had a colleague in Boston, Dr. Wanda Montañez, who helped me write a proposal so that I could become a director, because with that coordinator title, as I tried to apply to jobs in other places, I would not get recognized because that's the way this field works. So it wasn't until I had the help of that colleague to write that proposal and get the director title that I was able to have traction and to move in the field. And things were more smooth ever since, but immediately I encountered issues in the field. Thank you.
I certainly have an experience that I'd like to share to illustrate what some of those challenges were for me and how I navigated through them. So this summer I think will be perhaps mark 4 or 5 years that I've been here at the University of Arizona. And prior to that, I was born and raised in California, and that's where I've done the bulk of my higher education career. And several years prior to moving here to pursue work here at the university, if you had ever asked me if I would have relocated for a job, I would have said absolutely not. And a little bit of context as to why I was saying that at the time kind of goes back perhaps to certainly some of my cultural ties. You know, my entire family is located in Southern California, or Central California, as well as a little bit in Northern California. And so I think, you know, for someone certainly who has a layer of identities that often require quite the navigating of systems, including being a woman of color, certainly being a first-generation college student, certainly, obviously, the first in my family to pursue things like a master's degree, a PhD, very foreign concepts. So many years prior to even being extended the opportunity to come here, I would have said absolutely not, because the sheer thought of moving for a job opportunity that would dislocate me from my network was unimaginable. And it wasn't until I had a turning moment. I was in my doctoral program and had the amazing opportunity to get connected with one of my faculty mentors to be a part of a research experience. And one of the things that we were researching was the mentorship experience, or lack thereof, of faculty and administrative leadership of color across the U.S. And through that experience, I had the opportunity to see many people of color throughout the nation, faculty, administrative leaders, who had also made that jump at some point in their careers. And that activated something in me personally, emotionally, cognitively, to where I started to think about, well, maybe the next time somebody asks me that, I won't say no. Maybe I'll say maybe. And so it was a very pivotal moment, obviously, because I'm here and I moved away from home. And even though I've been here for a couple of years, I still reference that as home, because for me, that's where family is. And so I think that when we recruit folks, we have to think about how we're going to make them feel connected. How are we going to create a sense of family for those people? So I meant to bring tissues because even as I was preparing for my thoughts this week, I was already crying. Okay. Thank you.
When I think about the people, circumstances, and places that stood in my way, one of the stories, slightly different, but it is rooted in family and family expectations for me. And I went to law school, and I am a first-generation college student. My mom didn't go to college in Japan, and then immigrated here with, my dad was in the Air Force, they met there, they came here. And she had expected that I would, I think she used to say to me in the crib, you're gonna go to law school or go to medical school. But it seemed quite embedded in me because I have a friend from middle school who said to me, I remember in middle school you said you were gonna become a lawyer. And I'm like, what? So I, as a good, dutiful daughter of a Japanese mom, I went to law school. And at the same time, we often conflicted because she had expectations about both. She was a bit of a rebel. You don't immigrate to the US from a very traditional Japanese family with 10 brothers and sisters and go off, but she expected me to be obedient and to be a professional in a way that she could understand it. And so in her own experience, that meant I would be a doctor, a lawyer, she knew I wasn't good at math, so there was no way engineering was ever going to become my field either, but there were very set expectations. And then I had the chance here when I was an undergrad to work with New Start, and then I went into law school. And I was like, oh, law school really sucks. You can go to law school. I'll be happy to encourage people to do that. But I realized that my heart was really in education. But I was pretty chicken to tell my mom. And I also was really determined because it was such a dehumanizing environment. And in the law school at the time, when I enrolled here, there were 5 students of color. And we all knew each other, of course. We all hung out together. And 2 weeks before graduation, and I'm laughing, Sylvia Mydusky's in the back, who was one of my bosses and mentors. So I just want to say that I didn't tell my mom that I got the full-time position to be the coordinator of New Start until 2 weeks before I was graduating. And I was already with my partner and living on my own, but that just tells you something about the family dynamics and the expectations of what I was supposed to do as an Asian daughter. And so I was inspired to go into higher ed, and it's been a long journey. There have been lots of ups and downs, but even those family expectations was probably the first barrier. But what my mom also taught me was to be strong. And she didn't probably like that part of me because she activated it in me. And then I was like, well, you taught me this because of who you are. Because she had to be strong in this country, and she had to stand up for herself. And so those were the lessons that I learned from her. And so I would say that that's some of where it started shared with me. And I was lucky here at the U of A. I worked for Socorro Carizosa, I worked for Sylvia. I had all female bosses until I became the Dean of Students at UT Austin. And so there was something about being mentored and nurtured in environments where I worked for women and women of color, white women who were really supportive, that made a difference for me to see myself in different ways. And we can talk about UT later.
I just want to thank Marla for being the first person to cry. I probably will too, so it's okay. I'm going to answer the question similarly to Teresa, and I always like to let everyone know that Teresa hired me here 25 years ago, and if it were not for her hiring me here, I would not be here today. So Teresa was a mentor back then and still is right now. It's fascinating that all of us are first generation college students. I introduced myself that way as well. And I think one of the barriers, as Teresa said, is about family. In many ways, I made a decision on my own without checking in with any family member to fly across the country and go to graduate school. And when I shared that news with my mom, she lost her shiznit, okay? I mean, she lost it. And, single parent family, have an older brother, younger brother, but, just like your mom, she told me I could do anything and I could go anywhere and I embraced, your mom tells you that, and so you believe it and you go forth. But I think that both of our moms, they instilled that in us, but then when we made the choices that we did, they weren't happy with it, right? And I think for my mom, you just didn't leave home in that way, and it was so far. And she kept saying, "You don't know anybody in Arizona." Like, I know who I'm working for. That's about it, and it's okay. Because again, she instilled that confidence, that strength in me that I could do anything. And it was difficult. She just kind of stopped talking to me for not a long time. It felt like an eternity. It was a couple of weeks, so that's a long time. It's a long time for your mom to not talk to you. She was really upset, and but I never wavered, though, in that decision, because it felt great to make that decision. It was the first one that I made without consulting with anyone else. And I will say that for those of you in the audience who are first generation, it can be difficult. And there's a book called it's something blue collar and then white collar, and it's stories of first generation people and the struggles that they had with their family. Being able to get home quickly was not possible, and just I think my mom, I'm a daughter, and for the girls it makes a big difference that she expected that I would stay and be there to hang out, and just like moms and daughters do. My friend Tanisha Price Johnson over here, I'm always envious of her relationship with her mom because they hang out together, all that good stuff. So shout out to Tanisha and Jackie. But there are consequences for the decisions that you make as first generation students. There's certain expectations, and you have to keep your head down and keep moving forward, because if it's right for you, then you need to pursue. You shouldn't alienate necessarily, but sometimes it's not you alienating, it's your family members. All is well now, for the most part. And I'll say, changing gears, that some of the barriers still exist in the workplace. And as a woman of color who's passionate about students and success, there are situations that continue to happen on this college campus and every place else. And Marla and I talk about this all the time. We have a campus climate survey that we do every 5 years, and we did not share that information in the way that we should. And for people like myself who were so invested in making sure that we're telling the story of our students in particular and what their struggles are and their triumphs. I don't like to focus on just the struggles that students have, but also the triumphs. And we did not take the opportunity to talk about that and let the community know how our students are experiencing this institution. And you may think that because I have the title of Assistant Vice President and Dean of Students that I could affect that, but not really. There are people who are much higher than I am, and that's a true challenge that I will admit that I face on a regular basis here on campus. So don't believe that just because you have a fancy title that you can always make things happen, but there are covert ways that you can make sure that things get out there, but that's one of the struggles.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your vulnerability and authenticity. I appreciate that. So within your answers, actually, in telling your stories of struggle or challenges in rising in the career, you also mentioned your communities of support. So to target that a little bit more, where and how did you build those communities of support or find mentorship opportunities as you were rising in your roles or maybe in your role currently?
Oh, okay. I'm teasing. I think my approach to finding support is very unconventional. I don't really enjoy networking opportunities. Like events that say, come network, I can't. So I don't. But I love going to conferences, and I have this thing now where I only go to conferences if I actually get in to present. Okay. So, but you know, the people that are really engaged in what it is that I might be sharing, who might want to pull me aside and have a very intimate and intentional conversation, are the people that I end up gravitating towards. This one woman who was very vulnerable in the session, crying in the session, and took some time to speak with her. Now we have these car phone dates several times a week, every week, and she's in my region, and we do the same work. And it feels like we all work on the same campus, unfortunately, with some of the struggles we go through. So that's a great way to build my network, but then also I can connect with people that she knows. Sometimes it might be candidates that come in for a position that I actually have been able to maintain great relationships with. So just kind of unconventional, but the underlying factor for me is that it has to feel intimate, it has to feel special, and it has to feel as though it's not taking up what I consider to be very valuable time.
Yeah, you know, I think some of my comments, I want to make a comment kind of about my engagement with mentors and what that looked like very early on in my career and how that contrasts to what it looks now, because I think that that is a very important distinction. Currently, I certainly feel much more, I think, comfortable reaching out very strategically, you know, to engage in those types of relationships. I think certainly the fabulous, amazing women sitting to my right who work at the University of Arizona here certainly have been amazing colleagues and confidants who I have connected with, you know, around various topics and challenges here that I've had to navigate. And so that looks certainly a little bit different now. I think kind of the comfort level in terms of kind of where I'm at has allowed me to feel more comfortable kind of making that extension and request to engage in that type of relationship. But I would say very early on in my career, it always seemed like nebulous. Like people would ask like, oh, do you have a mentor? And I'm like, well, no, like, how do you get one? You know, they just ask you the question, but they don't do, there's not certainly a lot of, there's certainly not nearly enough work being done, particularly for, you know, it was certainly hard for me, you know, coming from a first generation college, you know, background. the types of I certainly was able to lean on my family for tremendous amounts of social and emotional support, no doubt. But could I ask them about, how I'm supposed to go about dropping a class if it's not working out for me? Absolutely not. And so I just felt like it was just a little bit kind of clunky and nebulous as to how you go about navigating and accessing mentorship and quality relationships of that nature early on in the career. And so, how do we, I think pretty mindfully now about, given where I'm at and how I'm comfortable extending out to people now, I think about ways in which I can use that level of comfort and whatever level of influence I have, or think that I have, to help facilitate those types of experiences for others who don't have that. And so, I don't know if you've perhaps kind of heard that phrase, as you're extending one arm out, the other hand is extended so that you're reaching and pulling people along with you. And I very much try and embody that philosophy and ethos in the way that I work and the way that I go about crafting relationships. And I think sometimes too, what we also don't highlight is that, I've been incredibly blessed and privileged with being able to have the opportunity to mentor many others, particularly here at the University of Arizona, who often tend to be young women of color. And they're seeking us out. They need us. They want us. And just as much as, one of the things that I've learned is just as much as they need us, I've certainly learned I need them. I need them.
I have to stop following Martha because I feel like I know, it's my choice. In many ways, when I think about my career trajectory, my own personality, which is, I seem like a calm person, like I have a couple staff here, but like I'm really stubborn. I can be angry, maybe dance, I don't know if you can. Really stubborn, I can be really angry. Like when somebody throws a challenge in front of me, I'm like, I'm gonna get through law school because you fucking think I can't. Right? Like that's, yeah. I'm like, and I'm gonna walk out with my values intact. And hell with the rest of you. So I tend to be that kind of person. And then I also, when I think about mentorship and support, I actually think about those who were my first bosses. And so, when I first worked with Socorro, she was so annoying to me because many of us have worked for her who live on this campus. But she would say, you have to write. And I'm like, really? Teresa, you need to write and you need to publish. I'm like, I don't care. Could you just leave me alone and let me do my job? And you do your job. But, I had people who were constantly pushing me. And then I was also a pain in the ass. Sylvia could nod at that, but I was a pain in the ass because I wanted to have answers to questions about things. And so I had people who let me kind of be who I was. They let me make mistakes along the way. I learned from that sort of mentorship that was really about, let's help you be who you are and be the best professional that you can be. And we're not here to change you. We're here to bring out who you are. And that's what I always felt like, even though that I did end up writing and I'm like, fine, I'm gonna thank you for pushing me to write, but because I'm stubborn. And so when I think about it, and really to build upon your point, Marla, the support communities, like last year we did an independent study with some of the grad students in the higher ed program. And I remember at the beginning, we had some changes in our centers, and one of the students came to me and said, do you want to back away and not do this? And I was like, no, because I need this. Like, I need the space. I need to hear from others. I need to be a part of what you all are doing and what your experiences you are having, because we still face those same challenges in these roles. And so for me, support is really about, not that I know more than you, but that we each have a different view because we come through different sets of experiences. And if we can bring those together, then we all benefit from that. And so how is it that I can be as open to learning from those who are with me on the journey for this particular semester or a period of time? Because that's what I get. Like, the richness is in those relationships that I have with staff that I work with who push me and are similarly a pain in the ass. We had a retreat in last June, and I said, you all are such wonderful pains in the ass. But you know what? I'm better. I'm better because people are a pain in the ass. And I'm better because students will ask me hard questions. And I need everybody to be better, to help me to be who I have the potential to be. And I want to support others to do that as well. And we do it in community. It's not this it's not that Kendall and I don't have a strong one-on-one relationship and I can't go in there and just go, wow, this is what's happening, and get support.
all the time. No, just kidding.
But, it also happens in the day-to-day, the little things. I remember a conversation with a law professor, old white guy, who I only took one class from, and I'm sitting at the bus stop with him on Speedway. And, he says, so Teresa, what are you gonna do when you graduate? And I'm like, I cannot go into practice. He says, why would you? You don't have to. And if you were in a tier 1 school, and I was like, oh, somebody else acknowledges this is not a tier 1 school, yes, tell the truth a little bit, instead of selling ourselves as the best always. He said, if you were in a tier 1 school, you would be with other people who aren't fighting for the top 10% and to go into local firms. So stick to it and do what you want. So sometimes it was a conversation with one person who affirmed what was in my heart and in my gut. And that's what we do every day with each other. That's what our responsibility is to each other, to really listen and be there and to say yeah, or like, I got those too, and I need that. So.
Wow, very profound. I think for me, I never had a mentor, like a singular mentor. And I think that's okay because I chose to interact and engage with multiple people and pick the parts of them that I could learn from. And I've had great mentors who sometimes knew they were mentors, and other times, most of the time you don't, they didn't know, because I would watch how people handled situations or how they engaged, and would just learn from that and learn from them, because there's no one person that can, you can't just have, well, you could. I just believe that for me, it's been best to look at lots of different people, and they're not always people who were more seasoned than you, meaning older, or it's lots of different people that you encounter that you can learn so many things from. And there's lots of people in this room who you have served as official or unofficial mentors for me, because I admire how you do what you do. I think as far as support is concerned, I'm going to take a little roundabout way. I think it's important for you to make sure that you have support and community outside of your workplace. Outside of the workplace. I have amazing friends and colleagues here on campus, but I think it's more important to have people who are not within the higher ed community, who doesn't speak the jargon. I realized that I'm embedded in higher ed. Someone in the community asked me a question about when something happened, and I said, oh, that was fall semester of 2014, and they're like, what? What month was it, Kendall? Because my world is in semesters, right? And so those are the kinds of situations where you recognize that there are other people out there in the world who don't understand how we operate here and can give us some perspective. And where I get that from primarily is through my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta. There you go. and you know, I am just so enriched by the members of that sorority. They mostly are Delta Deers who are senior citizens. I hang on to every word that they say, everything that their life experiences. Some of them have been superintendents or school principals in K through 12. And it's just incredible to hear about their life experiences and how I can learn from them. And it's just, and that they see something in me. I mean, they're just, every time, anytime I'm on the news, my cell phone blows up saying, "We saw you on TV, you look beautiful." And, you know, even when I thought, oh my God, it was terrible, you know, but they're just so supportive. And other folks too, you know, my sons played youth football. I still run into those people in the neighborhoods and stuff. And so it's really important to get outside of this campus. And if you don't do that, please start, because this place can't be everything for you. You need some distance, and that support from people outside of the university is really important.
Thank you so much. So, as women of color in executive leadership positions, I'm assuming the road hasn't been completely smooth, just a perfect straight path. So with that, my question to you all is, has there ever been a time when you just felt like giving up, whether that was an internal giving up or external roadblock? And if so, how did you empower yourself to get through that?
I believe in quitting. And I'm saying that because I actually do believe in quitting. Because I've quit multiple times in my own career. And despite my stubbornness, you know, that I talked about before. But when I left the University of Arizona, I actually took a position at University of Michigan. And, you know, I had all these red flags with the boss I was going in to work with. I was working in academic multicultural initiatives. There are all sorts of reasons why I should not have taken that job. And they all came true. And I was like, this is a lesson to be learned. But what happened was 6 months into that job, I submitted my letter of resignation and I gave 2 weeks notice. And I had people say to me, "You're crazy. Like, you just killed your career." And I was like, well, that's it. Okay, whatever. But that job and what I was asked to not do in that job, I was asked to occupy a seat. I was asked to not address issues. I was asked to play a political game, and I didn't go there to do that. And it was killing my soul. And I said, yeah, this is not worth it. And I had a really great friend who was a mentor. We supported each other. And she said, how long can you stay in this job? 6 months? I was like, no. She said, 3? No. A month? No. 2 weeks? Maybe. She's like, you gotta leave. And so I did. And then I had left Arizona and sold a house here, had a year-long lease. I was 6 months into it. I'm like, I have no job. I don't have to pay rent. And so I started applying for jobs in retail and whatever, you know, I was like, whatever, I gotta pay the bills. And then the Dean of Students there had a failed search for the co-director of their intergroup relations program. And she said, you wanna take this for a year and see if it works? And I did. And that shifted. And the same thing happened. I did that job for 6 years. I was at Michigan for 6 years, became an associate dean of students with the multicultural portfolio. And then I got restless, and you know, things happened internally. There were student protests. There was lots of backlash from it, and I was like, it's time to go. Like, it's time to quit. I mean, when I was at the U of A, I actually quit before I had another job too, but anyway. And then I went to UT Austin and I applied for the Associate Vice President and Dean of Students job. Because that was my goal, was to be a Vice President for Student Affairs before I was 40. And because that's what I thought, whatever, I should be doing. And 6 months in, I was like, I hate this. I don't know, maybe I've been here longer than 6 months, Kendall. I might not be good. I was stubborn. I stayed for 4 years because I had to have a plan, and I knew I needed to leave. And I was like, I was in for the first time, a mainstream administrative role where I wasn't advocating. I had to be the dean of students, and it kind of sucks sometimes to be the dean of students, a lot, because you are the dean for all students. And so what's required of you and what you have to do at a political level as the dean of students in the South, in Austin, in the state of Texas, next to the legislature, was very challenging. And so I stayed for 4 years, and then I got offered the vice president for student affairs job, and I turned it down. And then I tendered my resignation 3 months later, and I left higher ed for 10 years. And that changed my life also. I wrote, I did research, I stepped out of the box, I did all the other things I wanted to do, I consulted, and then I didn't ever think I was going to come back until this job opened, and I was like, oh, this is a job I could do because I want to do it. And so I actually do believe in, it's a joke, but I believe that, like, if that is not what sparks you, if it does not feed your soul, if it is killing your soul, then that's too high a price to pay.
I just want to add a moment where Teresa had such an influence on me upon her departure from the U of A. Teresa, you know, most of the time, how many of you have seen a letter of resignation? Right, it's pretty blah, you know, I'm out as of this day. And deuces. And Teresa's letter of resignation, she resigned. I don't want to speak for Teresa because the university wasn't going in the right direction when it comes to students of color. And I think it was 2 pages, 3 pages, 3-page letter, and I have it still in my, I have a copy of it because, and it's in my, I have a file. I haven't shown it to you. I have a file that has all of my contracts from over the years and all of that in that file, and I pull it out every now and then. Not that I'm leaving right now, but I pull it out when I'm feeling down because Teresa, because she resigned based on her principles and her core values, and it was so brave. And the letter was amazing. She quoted Dr. King, and I still have that letter in a file, and I pull it out every now and then because I need that inspiration. So thank you, Teresa.
All right, so that is the end of my questions. Thank you. But we have time for a couple audience questions. So would anybody like to pose a question? I see you, Ms. Tammy.
Oh, I don't need a mic. I raise kids. I don't need a mic. My question is to the entire panel. I know you're, can you hear me?
I need you with the mic, yeah.
Oh, you need to hear me.
Yeah, please. Thank you, Tammy.
This is going to be really loud now. My question is to the entire panel. I noticed you have, you're in a continuum with age. How does your age play into, or has ever played into, how you were treated on campus, what kind of support you got, what kind of feedback? Because I have worked across my life. And I know how when I was younger and I was in a position, I wasn't taken as serious as I was taken later in life. And has that been part of your experience as well, like based on your age? Ages.
Since I'm the oldest, I'll start.
See, we didn't know that.
And I'm 52, and I'm happy to own 52. Because I love 50s. Anyway, definitely, you know, in particular, I think about the intersection of gender, race, ethnicity, and age. And also even body, because I'm shorter. And when I was younger, I would have people call me cute as a professional. So never call me cute. If you see someone win, don't say it's cute, because no. But so definitely there were ways in which I was not taken seriously. And when as I got older and when I went to UT Austin, I was the first woman of color as the Dean of Students, or person of color. There had only been mostly women and white women. And I was the youngest of the senior leadership team for the division. So all of my colleagues were white men in their 50s and 60s, and I was 35 when I took the job. So definitely there were lots of ways in which I was undermined, in which people didn't think I was whatever it is, all the stories they want to tell about who I was, which I got to prove them wrong on. And I think as I got into my 50s, there's another challenge, because as women, you're not seen as vibrant, you're not as young, you're not as powerful as you were, depending on who sees you, and you get invisibilized. I had somebody say to me, "You're like everybody's mom," and I was like, no, only to two young people in my life, that's it. But that maternal thing gets turned on, and someone may see it as a compliment. It's actually quite offensive as a woman professional who also is a mom. So I'm gonna stop talking and pass it to maybe the next young.
I'm the second oldest at 51. I think that that's a really good question, Tammy. I think what I've recognized in the last, I think it's been 4 years now that I've been in this role, that where I've seen a certain kind of response when I'm introduced to someone. Like for a few years ago, I was introduced to Mayor Rothschild, our mayor of Tucson, and people tend to start with your title, and then they say your name, and I wasn't offended by it. He said, "Wow, you're a really young Dean of Students," and he gets it. If you know Mayor Rothschild, he's a really nice guy. And he said, "I expected to be old white men to be the Dean of Students," and quite frankly, that's often the case across the country when it comes to being in this role. And so it wasn't that he was surprised necessarily. It wasn't a response to me and my ability, but just that, the stereotype of who should be in certain positions, or what people are accustomed to seeing in certain positions. I think that for me, because I've been here forever, it'll be 25 years in May, that, I've had the opportunity to build relationships across campus. And Teresa mentioned the New Start Summer Program, and Rudy, we ran the program for 12 years together. So you build a lot of relationships through a program like that. And I think that, I'm fortunate that I've been here for so long that I've had the ability to demonstrate, because you gotta show and prove, right? You gotta show and prove when you're in these positions, and if you do that, then you don't have some of those issues. I think it's also about how you carry yourself too. I love to laugh, for those who love to have fun about things, and but not everybody has that kind of persona, but it's about how you're producing, how you present yourself, but also, you have to walk in confidence as well. I was just sharing with a colleague that I had to check up here very directly about paternalism and all kinds of things, but I'm 51 now. I'm 51 and I'm feeling myself, and I'm going to tell you how I feel. It feels great. I can't wait for you all to get into your 40s and 50s, because you just recognize, nobody has time for that stuff, and you need to hear it. Right? So that's my point on that.
Yeah. And I think just really quickly for me, especially when I first started out in my career, it was particularly challenging for me. At the time, I was in my early 20s, and I was also set within an environment. I was actually started off in academic affairs before I moved to the student affairs side of the house. And I was working for an academic support program who provided support services to underrepresented minority students in the greater Los Angeles area, particularly those pursuing STEM fields. And so I was in academic affairs within a College of Engineering setting. And so aspects of my identity, in addition to age, that were challenging were being female, a person of color, and incredibly young. And so I would say at the time, you know, there are some remnants of what Kendall mentioned about, you know, I always had felt perhaps pretty compelled then to demonstrate through work and productivity that the ways in which I need to be valued within the organization. So that's often how it translated into what strategies I enlisted to work through that, and I would say I still do that. The other thing, as ridiculous as it may sound, is coming to work, and I thought about what appearance I was portraying through my wardrobe. So, you know, coming up to work, you know, within a College of Engineering setting, and me in my early 20s barely being able to afford my little blazer, and, you know, and coming to work on the days that I had those special meetings, making sure that I looked the part. So there were certainly some strategies that I enlisted that certainly have stayed with me today, and continue to be strategies that I enlist in the back of my pocket to make it work.
So many things I would like to say. I'm going to be careful. I became an assistant vice president when I was 33, and feedback I immediately got, somebody was like so eager to tell me, oh, so-and-so said that they didn't consider you because you look too young. And my immediate response was, in my brain, of course, is, well, black don't crack. And so I was thinking, but then, you know, but the bigger point about that is representation. And people of color, black people, are so severely outnumbered on my campus. So if there were more people that look like me, maybe that you would just understand that this is a particular look. But even bigger than that, my age does equate with experience, but that's not the defining character for experience, like your age. I've worked really hard to get here, and people are out socializing. I'm at home working. I work around the clock, so please don't discredit all the effort that I put into me arriving here. Also, as a black person, you get these messages from your family telling you have to work so much harder to even try to be equal. So I'm very intentional about being dressed or overdressed. My dress code is, girl, where you going? So if I look in the mirror and I say to myself, girl, where you going? That means I am ready to go. That means that I might be a little bit over the top, but I know that I can still be seen as equal if I'm over the top. I'm overly prepared for all of my meetings, but I understand that that's just a part of my life experience or a life requirement as a black person. Thank you.
Boy, am I glad to be here today. My name is Noura Douala. I'm with the Graduate College and Student Affairs. And I'm sitting in the back, just so moved. And I'm wondering, the moment that we're in as a state, as an institution, and as a nation, is such a challenging, emotive moment, right? And as the panel does their work, I have a feeling how rapidly higher education is changing. Maybe we need to figure out how to be more creative about channels of support for you guys, so that when senior leadership is pushing back on important issues, you don't feel so alone and so vulnerable. And I say that because before I came here this morning, those amazing Parkland kids were on the television, as was this humongous high school student, middle school student, Washington DC rally for gun control. So I just think like the old, we throw out the old and we embrace this new energy that's showing us that sometimes you just speak truth to power, but do it in a way where you trust that we will hold your back. Right? Because I think so many of the challenges that you face alone. Right? And the system thrives, the systemic discrimination in higher education thrives because those that are given your titles and who are asked to do the work are left alone to do the work. Right? And so on our campus right now, I think there are real pockets of safety for doing this kind of work, but even our offices and those places where that happens are disconnected. Right? So I just think you should challenge us to be there for you and find ways to reach out to us so that you're taken, there's an understanding when you engage the system that it's not just you, right? That there is this very obvious space of support, people of support, and not just students necessarily, right? But I think there are faculty allies, graduate student allies, staff allies who would be there. Right? And we can tell from the speed with which people showed up at this event. Thank you so much for what you do.
Our last question. Hi, I'm Rizwana. I'm an undergrad here. So I'm honestly kind of trying not to cry right now because I know people here, it'll be embarrassing. But anyone who knows me knows that I have a tendency of throwing myself into work and spaces. Most of those spaces are white dominated and or male dominated. But the reason I do it is because I don't have mentors in those spaces and I want to be someone that other people can look up to. But being an undergrad and being so young, I really don't know how to do that and how to reach out and try and pull other people up to where I am or beyond that, because even now today I'm trying to look and find my mentors. So I was just wondering if you have any advice for someone who is young and is trying to be a support system to other individuals, other women of color who are also young and trying to get into this system, but is facing this feeling of isolation, being the only person in a lot of these spaces.
That's a really good question, and it's a really tough one. But I'd like to perhaps maybe laser in on an aspect of what you just shared with us. You both want to influence others, but you need someone yourself. You know, a person, a community, right? That's also what you're asking for. And you know, I probably don't do the very best job at this all the time. But, you know, oftentimes we are the last ones, we are the last person to consider in terms of who might need help, right? I've got a lot of people, you know, who, you know, I want to be there to support. But it's one of those instances where they, you know, as you're getting on the plane and they tell you, especially actually if you're traveling with a child, they literally physically come to your seat and they make sure and tell you to put make sure to put the oxygen mask on yourself before doing it for your child. And part of what you're saying makes me think about that and how, you know, you can't give of yourself if there's nothing left to give. So before you leave, I will give you my information and I'll be happy to connect with you.
Ditto that, so why am I talking? I think that there's a desire to fight all the time. Like what it means to do this work and be who we are and be in the spaces that we are means we're always fighting. And sometimes I have to choose not to fight. Like sometimes I have to rest. And to have longevity in this means like I have to sleep. I have to not talk sometimes. I have to not challenge the person who yesterday sat in my office and saw a picture I had that related to Japanese internment camps and asked me if I could help her find someone who was fluent in Japanese to translate for a program. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not here for that for you. But I just swallowed it, and then I went and vented, and I'm like, that's not what I'm gonna challenge today, because sometimes I don't have it in me to fight it every single time something comes up, and that's okay. And we often then beat ourselves up for not being strong enough, for not advocating enough, for not doing more. And that's a really insidious cycle. And so rest is also really, really important. Like, find that place where you can just breathe deep in a safe spot and maybe have people with you. And I'm happy to talk with you afterwards too.
I would also say not to underestimate the power of student leadership and organizations. That's how I got started. I was an RA, and I also was affiliated with various student clubs and was able to find support with peers through those types of opportunities. So if you don't see something that you like that is meeting your needs, you can create anything to fill that void. So I would encourage you to create something that you would like and to pull other people in to create that type of support, like peer mentorship. There's plenty of opportunities, and I can give you my information as well.
Rizwan, that was a really great way to end our question. Thank you for that. And this is truly inspiring. Panelists, you have inspired me, and I know you have inspired our audience. We had RSVPs off the charts. We had to tell people, sorry, we can't take you. But knowing that many of us are here because we need that community of support. We're looking for the advice. We're looking for your stories and the stories around the room. So hopefully all of you, our panelists included, can leave feeling encouraged and inspired to do the good work that you're doing and to work with each other to grow closer so that we can all push each other, whether at University of Arizona, Stevenson University, not even at a university, wherever you go in life, we have to be there for one another. So to our panelists, Kendall Washington White, Teresa Graham Brett, Marla Franco, and Natalie Gillard, thank you so much for your support.